Welcome back to the show. Dana,
Yes.
I want to rehash an old...
Well, not rehash. We are going deeper into...
I want to split the hair even more.
Okay.
I want a full head of split hairs with this one.
I was laying in bed last night, not sleeping, for reasons I won't get into. And you just reminded me of this. I was half dreaming, half not dreaming about, could you have a knife that's small enough to split a pine needle along they're so small. And I think it's because I was watching that show, The Bear, and they were doing all these weird things for cooking. I'm like, you could slice it and then turn it into some delicacy. And you reminded me that was splitting hairs, right?
And for those of you out there, our friends,
yeah,
if this is something that you also think about, that might be diagnostic. Not in the DSM, but diagnostic.
We call it diagnostic. It's like the lived experience things you think about. Oh my God, that's too funny. But what are we splitting hairs about today, Gwen?
Okay, because this keeps coming up in my practice, and I keep trying to help people understand the nuances and the differences, which I think are quite big, but they're challenging for people to understand, especially for our traditional ABA people.
Oh, yeah.
Which is there is a significant difference between stimming and compulsions.
Yes.
Please.
Yeah.
I'm begging.
People put it all in a big bucket of it's all OCD or it's all stimming, right?
Yeah. And I'm like I get the nuance, right? Because some stims can turn into compulsions.
Yes.
That happens.
I've shared on here before when I was a teenager about it. In retrospect, it was stimming. It was a cognitive thing I would do, but I would hold my breath while I would do it. And then that time I was in a restaurant doing it with my friends, and I got up and passed out and fell and cut the top of my eye on some guy's boot. I woke up on the floor with my eye bleeding, my lid bleeding. And that had crossed from a coping stimming thing to compulsion. I didn't feel like I could control it. It felt like I had to do it. And after that point, when I actually passed out in public because of it, no one knew I was doing this, by the way. It was all big secret inside my head. I stopped doing it. I did this thing where I would be rubbing my teeth together, and all of a sudden I chipped one of my molars and I stopped. So it really is. I mean, I have these personal examples of something that started out as soothing, probably stimming in hindsight, to where it got to where it was harmful to myself. And that was enough of a wake-up call to me to stop it. But I've had folks, and you've had folks, that can get to a point with something like that where it actually now is turning into like self-harm or something that is really not okay. And then how do you stop it? That isn't stimming. Stimming is, like you said, it's regulating. Stimming is something that helps you deal with stress in the moment. It can look OCD-ish. When I say ish, because it's not OCD.
Yeah.
Someone, for example, who's really starving for structure in their lives or trying to figure out routine in their lives, from the outside perspective, that can look like OCD, when really what you're looking for is some structure to deal with that executive functioning issue.
Yep.
And talking out like what's going on internally, it really helps. If I'd had a therapist back then in my teens and I would have said, this is what I'm doing in my head, not that they would have known I was autistic because it was too long ago, but it might have given me more insight as to why I was doing it. I just thought I was a freak. I thought, them doing this thing, no way in hell I'd ever tell anybody about it because it's so weird, right? And knowing, why are you doing that? What does it serve? How does it help? How does it not help? Et cetera, et cetera. And then for me, those got to the point where it didn't feel like it was something I was consciously doing just to deal with the stress in my environment. It was a have to now. And that's where it gets into compulsion, right? That wasn't serving as structure or routine for my day to become this thing. It was like doorknob checking and that kind of thing. I had to do it. and it would be totally distracting. And while I was doing that, I couldn't think about anything else, right? Stimming for me now is like this, my spinny thing that makes me feel better. I bought a Slinky the other day, and I'm like, this is the original Stim toy. It feels so good. And even my dog just gets mesmerized by it now. We'll just sit there and do the Slinky. That is not something that I'm losing work time because I can't let go of my Slinky, right? I mean, being silly here, but I think that's where some of the confusion can come from. It can get to the point where it is obsessive or it's a compulsion. And you can't know if it's a stim or a compulsion unless you ask the person, unless you get insight into what's going on inside their psyche. The outside person shouldn't be judging that's a stim, that's not a stim, because you have no idea what's going on internally for that person, right? You have to ask about it. So ABA therapy doesn't do that. It just looks at the behavior and extinguishes it, or tries to increase it. There's no asking about what's going on internally with how or why or where or when you're using this thing.
Yep.
So yeah, absolutely. And if you call someone just they're being OCD and it's a STEM thing, now you're taking away a resource from them.
This is one of my biggest problems.
Yeah.
Because traditional behaviorists have no problem in stopping stims or stopping behavior, right? Yeah. And when you don't know why that person is doing that, and to be fair, that can be difficult. We do have people who are non-speakers who have challenging. They are challenged. They have communication challenges. It's difficult to know. Maybe they have words, but maybe they haven't connected their words to their internal feelings and their internal sensations. So maybe that's even hard.
They can't describe it well. Yeah.
Right. Yep. So we've got all of those pieces. However, when we go to extinguish and eliminate stims right out of the gate, that's a problem for me. And then when I see harm being done, hair picking, skin picking would be examples of this, gum picking, running, getting a thought and running into the street and having to do something for me is very clearly compulsive. And so it's like, you extinguish that? No, you don't extinguish that by ignoring it. You get in the way of it. Like, you help that person in the moment. So that for me is that's where I'm seeing a real breakdown. Yeah. And so on one hand, we're removing someone's resources, someone that probably doesn't have a ton of resources to begin with.
Right, exactly.
And then we are not acting when there's harm being done.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, what?
It kind of goes backwards. Like, what? Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
And I think when we remove the O, I mean, even if we oversimplify this, if we're saying that traditional ABA is SR, stimulus response, stimulus response, stimulus response, we can only act on what we see. In other words, when we don't even add the O to that, which all of us in psychology were taught to add the O, which is the organism, SOR, stimulus, organism, response. When we don't consider those things deeply and pay attention, I think we can do harm.
Yeah, I mean, even I'm thinking of our puppy, right? So she's gotten this habit lately. When we want to take her outside, we say, go outside, and then you go to reach for her and she runs away. And it's this game. So we could say some of it's a game, which it is, and then we just walk away, or just say, wait. And if she's in a place where she can contain her wanting to play, she'll wait and let us pick her up. Yeah. Last night, I had my coat on, ready to get her, and she just got the zoomies. And I'm like, it'd be really dumb for me at this point to just run after and get mad at her. So I just stood there and let her run around, do the zoomies, get it out. And then she stood on the rug and I said, are you ready? And then she let me pick her up. And it was sort of like if I would have imposed the behavior as just her not letting me pick her up.
Yep.
And I just get mad at her and say, I'm traumatizing her because I'm not taking into mind that there's something else going on. And in her case, it was excess energy she needed to get out. Right. Yep. So that even in something as fundamental as dog training, we allow that. Why in the hell are we not doing that with humans in ABA therapy, right? Why are we not realizing that there is this organism that might not be aligning with what we think, and it takes some time to figure that out, right? My therapist at the time, even not knowing the whole autism thing, when I finally did tell her about the counting and some of that kind of stuff, she's like, well, of course, you grew up in a really traumatized background, and that's your way of coping. Even she, thank God, she was, an angel sent from wherever. She didn't judge me. She never said I was obsessive compulsive. She said, that's the way you're dealing with it, of course. And we dealt with the trauma, and that stuff did resolve itself quite a bit. I still have stims and some obsessive stuff, but nothing like I had before. But that was because she, spent the time to be like, well, what was going on at the time? Oh, well, how much time do you have? Right? I'm 13. How much time do you have? And tell you what the pond I was living in. So that sense of why are we splitting hairs around this? Because these are really important hairs to split. And even if you're trying to figure this out in yourself, is this a compulsion or is it a stim? So I've shared on here a lot of times, it's my thumb ones I pick. And if it's got a little thing hanging off there, now I know that that's a compulsion. What I've done with it is, okay, if I have a big piece hanging off and I have a sense now, if I pull it off or bite it off, I'm going to hurt it's going to bleed and I'm going to cause problems. I'll get the nippers out. I'll stop what I'm doing and I'll go do it. Right? Not always. Sometimes I do rip it off and I'm kind to myself. And now I wash it and put a Band-Aid on it and be like, okay, it happened, whatever. But that's pretty minor compared to some things that I could have been doing that are more disruptive, right? And now I see them as, oh, this is a stress outlet. Why am I doing this now? Right?
Yeah.
My wife and I used to go see the women Husky basketball in person. We had season tickets. And the joke was every time we'd be going to the game, driving to the game, I'd be covering my thumbs with Band-Aids preemptively. Because I know I'd get so worried about whether they were winning, I would just start picking at them. And it was like, that was a moment for me like, oh, I can be kind to myself and be like, okay, this is something you're going to do automatically to deal with stress, but it really wasn't a stim. It feels like kind of self-harm. Better is just screaming my head off, which was awesome when you're there because everybody else is screaming. I'm like, this is awesome, right?
Yeah.
So it is important to look at what the behavior is, how it serves you, how you feel about it. Is it something you do to soothe, or is it something that's driving you and you don't feel in control about it, right? That will help you figure out for yourself a particular behavior. Which one is it?
I think control or locus of control is a great differentiating factor.
Yeah,
Dina.
Yeah.
Because even in stims, and to be fair, sometimes stims happen like twirling your hair, or like there's lots of things, shaking your leg. I mean, there's like things that people like do. But twirling your hair when it's not getting pulled out is not a big deal. Like, so I get there's like nuances, but I love that idea of like, does it regulate you? Yes or no? Do you feel in control of it? Yes or no? Yes, I feel in control. Probably more likely a stim. No, I don't. Compulsion. Does it make me feel good? Probably a stim. Does it make me like feel good? No, it's probably a compulsion. Who's in control of it? Right. The other thing I think about OCD and compulsions a lot is I really believe that it's quite perverse. Like, especially like OCD behaviors are perverse in many ways. It's like they can make you do things you don't really want to do.
Oh yeah.
They're kind of they're like not, more traditional OCD thinking can be really, really kind of dark.
Yeah, that's true.
When it's, not like.
I mean, think about like, don't step on a crack, you're going to break your mother's back. That's pretty dark.
Yeah.
You think about it, unless you really hate your mother.
It depends on your mother.
Even then, I never stepped on cracks on purpose. Loved my mother.
No, of course.
And wanted to kill her at the same time. But yeah, that sense of, would I want to not ever pick my thumb cuticle goes in? Sure, I'd love to do that, but it just isn't realistic for me. Right.
Yeah. And I think like the other thing with compulsions, in a way, it's like, it's never enough.
It's never enough. That's right.
I get it. And it's another thing and more and more and more. Yeah. You squash one compulsion and another one pops up. Like,
you never feel
like
satiated.
More compulsive.
Yeah. And if you do feel satiated, it's very temporary.
Very temporary.
Yeah. Versus a structure that you're trying to get in place that actually feels, you're like, oh, okay, now I'm good. and it stays
Yeah.
that way. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think like the encouragement here is to just drive more understanding and to have different frameworks to think about these behaviors.
Yeah.
Um
And shame's
and
a big thing of this too. So you're going to
yeah.
be that
Yeah.
shame is a cunning foe. So if you're thinking about these things for yourself, you're going to run into that shame wall, and it's okay. You know, you're just trying to deal and be gentle with yourself and say, "This is how I'm trying to deal," and maybe it's not a good trying to deal. Maybe I should change that or ask for help because I can't stop it and I want to stop it. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Because
And
we as
maybe
humans do these things. They're clearly within our normal human repertoire. But I've had so many clients that I've worked with over the years that hair pulled and they're really distressed about it. They didn't like having bald spots. It's not like someone comes to see me, this is great, I pull all my hair out, right? I've never had someone do with hair pulling who liked it.
Yeah.
And if I just say, okay, well, we're going to, have you snap a rubber band every time you're pulling your hair, that's not really going to work. It has to be insight focused, right? We had to dig into what was going on in their psyche at the time. And that's the only thing that's ever resolved it.
I think, and that's why I think it's so challenging to support an autistic who can't give you their inner experience.
Yes. Yes.
This is why,
and why
this
ABA
is so
became a
challenging.
thing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And this opens this, there's a lot of risk here because, and this is where I see harm because there's vulnerability without the voice of the person.
Yes.
And this, I think it's even more important, right, for us to really encourage people who feel like they are in charge of someone else, because that's how they feel a lot of times, to really deeply understand where these things are coming from. And I'm not saying there's an easy answer. I am saying this is a complex situation.
Yes. Yes.
But please look beyond what you think. I mean, I talked to Deborah Budding a lot on my podcast, and she's like the guru of sensory motor, of bringing sensory motor thinking to understanding people. And that, we're not just like a brain in a jar connected to a robotic body, right? That there are lots of things that are happening. How we meet the demands of the world are heavily run through the sensory motor system. And a lot of Stims come from the sensory motor system, but a lot of compulsions also do as well. And so just that, adding a bottom up idea to just understanding someone could revolutionize ABA. That alone, they would not know what to do. Traditional ABA people will not know what to do with sensory motor thinking. Nervous system
It'll just become
thinking,
therapy then, right? It'll become insight focused. I mean,
so that's, and I know there are a lot of ABA people out there that are really trying to update and to come out. But I'm going to tell you right now, it's not just by adding acceptance and commitment therapy. Okay. Just because you add ACT, which I don't even think I think it's out of your realm. I'm just saying. I'm just saying it's out of your wheelhouse from a training standpoint. But adding that doesn't make you modern ABA.
No.
So
so like if I could, I'm thinking in the process of the holding my breath and doing that stuff that I told my therapist about, and doing that 1, 1, 2, 1, and then backwards. And she said, it really is. It's a way you're finding a way to control. And she didn't mean it in a bad way. Like control can be a good thing because you grew up in an environment where you had no control. Yeah. And then it can also be a barometer for you that when you find yourself doing that, what's going on? Why are you needing to stim, right? So that's the other thing that ABA therapy doesn't really go into. I'm stimming. What's going on that you're needing to stim? Is it something you need to get away from? Is it something you need to say? Is it an inescapable stress? What exactly? So now if I find myself doing that in my head, I'm like, oh, wow, why am I doing this? And inevitably, it's in a meeting or something like that I feel trapped. And that's what I'm doing, just like when I was a kid. Childhood is a form of being trapped, really, especially if it's not going well. And now I can be like, okay, I'll give myself permission to do it very subtly in my head that I do it that way because I'm not hurting myself. And I'm like, oh, there it is. So now it's like, oh, thank you. Thank you for showing me that. And now I realize that I'm stressed and I didn't realize I was stressed. So there's so many great ways that you can gain insight and use it that aren't judgmental and aren't shaming. There's a reason your brain and your body are doing what they're doing. Don't just try to suppress them and be mad at them. Listen to them. Get to know
Use
them,
it as
become friends with
information.
them. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
You should never jettison a part of you, ever. Learn about it. Know the whys, because that's where compassion comes from. Whether it's me being compassionate for another person or being compassionate with myself, it's understanding that gets you there, not judging.
Yeah. You know, Dana, I don't know who this is from. I don't know if it's a Buddhist philosopher or Rumi or someone. And it really talks about having your emotions be guests in your home. So there's a sense of more control there. You know what I mean? And I always thought that was so helpful in the sense of, okay, this is a guest. I can kick them out when I'm done. But, you know, but you can also have a conversation with them and you can enjoy their company and you can understand them. And there's all these different ways to do that. And I love, you know, I love that. I think the other thing too, I don't know if I can find it. There's another thing about emotions. Let me see if I can find it. But I think like here I get frustrated with the ways that people, I get where it's coming from. The intention is to understand and to support. You know, I get that. But when we're not able to look beyond those things, and you know, I think behaviorists would say, no, we've got, we look at the functions of behavior under SEAT: sensory, escape, avoidance, tangible, access to tangible, right? They're going to say that, but there's more than that, people. There's more to this, and that it's changing because it's dynamic. The environment itself will be one of the biggest indicators of the pressures that person is feeling. So you got to look at your environments and what happened before and after and what that battery for that person looks like. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So I think that for me is this thing. So going from like Rumi or whatever, the Buddhist philosopher of like, that very sophisticated emotions are guests. There's also another one that I read, which is emotions are like farts. You can only hold them in for so long.
And sometimes they stink and sometimes they don't.
You're welcome, everyone. By the way, we started with the difference between stims and compulsions, and we ended up on farts.
Right.
You've come to the right. If you wanted a non-linear episode or episodes, you've come to the right place, Dana, and I will give you a non-linear episode.
Yeah, but you know, a good fart can feel really, really good.
Oh my God. It's like cathartic.
Yeah, it is sort of stimming in a way.
Everybody farts, Dana.
Everybody farts? Yeah, isn't that book that everybody poops, that little kid's book?
Everyone poops, yeah.
Yeah, everyone poops, yeah. Everyone farts too. Yeah.
I mean, look at how professional we are. We are two professional psychologists talking about farting.
Look at my farts, Yep.
That's it.
And like our dog, we don't know when she farts because she doesn't have butt cheeks to make the noise, but we can tell sometimes.
Well, and you know what? Actually, Stanley gave an audible the other day, and it was unusual, but he surprised himself. Let me just say, he got it like, whoa. And I was like, that was you, buddy. Wasn't me. That was you. That's all I'm saying.
You talk about our dog being our mother's daughter because when she burps, you can hear it. And we let gas fly freely in our house. And the dog was
that's two.
Yeah, it's really funny.
That's two. Yeah. Hey, by the way, that should also be in a shirt. Let gas fly freely.
Let gas should be set free.
Well, I'm glad you guys all came, our friends. I'm going to call everyone our friends. I'm just like the friends of the pod.
It sort of fits that idea of like the repressed idea of don't fart in public. Yeah. Like I'm thinking of like the Queen. The Queen would have never farted in public. She would have held it
No, have you seen The
in.
Crown? Absolutely
You know,
not.
that anally retire, and it's like it's just a body function. Why? What the hell? And that is that along those same lines. Like, really, we're going to suppress a body function? It's like, don't blink. Why is it not blinking? Why is it holding farts in? So arbitrary. Really.
Again, if you're listening to Dana and you're like, oh, that's interesting, that could be also diagnostic. She just went through 3 different levels of how farts went to the queen, which went to social norms and nuances. You're welcome, everyone.
Yeah, you're welcome.
You've come to the right place. All
drop
right.
the mic.
Be good to you.
Exactly.
Be good to you, everyone. Bye.